is a devoted husband, father of three adult children, and grandfather to twins. And he has been a UU for almost 35 years. I note that Brian is a skilled sailor, having sailed solo from Mexico to Hawaii and subsequently to Victoria. Yet what I want you to know about Brian is that it is his commitment to UU that brought me to this congregation. We met in San Francisco after our respective offshore passages from Victoria. He headed out on Sundays on his collapsible bike to join the closest UU service. Brian's curiosity and willingness to engage in conversation and openness to being challenged and courage to challenge me has been a source of inspiration and delight to me. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Steffa, for those great words. See if I can live up to them. And thank you also for the invitation to the movie last night. It was a great introduction to today's talk on creation or evolution. Who cares? So, once upon a time, when women were birds, there was a simple understanding that to sing at dawn and to sing at dusk was to heal the world through joy. The birds still remember what we have forgotten, that the world is meant to be celebrated. Those words by Terry Tempest Williams. My purpose here today is not to cast doubt upon your belief in creation or evolution, but to inspire you to a greater appreciation for your life here on earth, how precious it is, and maybe to remind you of the awesomeness of our mortal beings. We'll start with a bit of participation on your part. Right now, take a look at something beautiful in your space and pretend you have a camera and point it at it and just take a mental picture of it. Now, what just happened? Air from my lungs passed through my vocal cords, jaw, and mouth to form sound waves. My brain sent electrical impulses down nerves that contracted those cord muscles so that the sounds resembled words that I wanted. Those sound waves traveled by way of Zoom through the air, vibrated your eardrum, tickled some small little bones in your ear canal that sent some nerve impulses into your brain that then returned them to coherence. Your brain then sent out more nerve impulses to your shoulder, your neck, your eyelids to take that pretend picture. Photons that left the sun roughly when this service started bounced off that object, showing colors, dark and white. Those photons then entered your eyeball and various rods were stimulated, which caused various parts of the optic nerves to send signals to the brain where the stored image using a number of neurons in your short-term memory. All that happened in an instant and with great precision. It was, wow, it's just a simple action, but extremely vast in its complexity. But wait, there's more. During this hour-long service, the autonomic nervous system will cycle our lungs for about 700 breaths of air. Air that has passed through the lungs of our ancestors for millennia. Our hearts will beat some 3,600 times, and I think mine probably a little more, giving my anxiety right now for this presentation. Minor little cuts and bruises are being healed. Many of you will grow about 2 meters of hair. Well, for me, mine are deciding to fall out. Breakfast is being digested into its component parts, and our body temperature is kept at a precise 37 degrees C. Try keeping a pot of water on the stove at a constant temperature to within 1/10 of a degree sometime, and you'll see just how hard that is, yet our bodies handle that effortlessly. We will blink some 1,200 times and think some 2,400 thoughts. And sadly, about 400 cancerous cells will be formed and hopefully be destroyed within this hour. For all the actions described here have been automatic, instinctive, but of humans, we may also have the ability to ponder. We have the ability to ponder. We may also have will. When I asked you to take that camera shot, most did. Some chose not to. It was a simple request, but a complex thought process that was triggered in your mind, deciding if it was worthwhile to go along. Issues of trust, maybe past experiences, some pain in your shoulder maybe, all weigh into a complex thinking process that wills your body to act, or not. 98% of what we know in the brain we learned about in this century. And it's one fascinating piece of machinery. My brain is too complex for my brain to comprehend it. For millennia, people thought that the creation of life required a God. Now we know that we have evolved from that first mud-covered, lightning-induced single living cell to us some 3.8 billion years later. Most of us just brush off anybody who believes in creation. But do we understand that a God almost makes more sense? To think that we have evolved to this level of consciousness is awe-inspiring. A human egg and cell and sperm meet, and a new 23,000 long gene string is created that will become a new person. Each cell keeps track of its function. It's going to be part of the finger that took that picture before, or part of the brain that decided which is my dominant hand. Replicating until we go from that fertilized egg to a complete infant with, hopefully, everything intact. At birth, an infant has about 2 trillion cells. In the growth of a fetus, so much can go wrong, but usually doesn't. Every child that is born is a miracle. Although we know more and more about biology and evolution, there are still many mysteries to me. Why do we have 2 kidneys and 2 lungs, but only 1 liver and 1 heart? What is will? What is the soul? And why is it that love plays such an important part in our being? Albert Einstein said, "The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. He to whom the emotion is a stranger who can no longer pause to wonder and to stand wrapped in awe is as good as dead. His eyes are closed." I marvel at the intelligence of computers. They can beat us at chess and at Go, and about 80% of the stock market trades are constructed by computers now. But as smart as they are, a computer will sit around forever before it decides, "Hey, I'm bored. Does anybody want to play chess?" Unlike us, computers have no conscious being. Geneticists have traced back our lineage to the first woman some 150,000 years ago. Within our genes lies a detailed record of our ancestry. Through DNA, our roots extend back to Africa as humans. And when we get the ability, we may be able to trace our ancestry back to the first single organism created in that mud pool when struck by lightning billions of years back. When we talk about the interconnected web of life, remember, we're not just connected, we're related. We are all one big extended family. In his book, Here on Earth, Tim Flannery writes, "And then there is me, billions of cells cooperating seamlessly at every moment, and a brain made up of a reptilian cell, a middle mammalian portion, and 2 highly evolved yet poorly connected hemispheres. Somehow that adds up to the thing I call me." And beyond that miracle of cooperation is a wider world, made up of a web of loved ones that I cannot live without. Spouse, children, parents, friends. Who's to say that a marriage cannot be a less complete a union than that between a chloroplast and the cell that hosts it? Beyond my family circle, there is a city with its millions of residents, my country, which coordinates actions through the ballot box, and beyond that, my planet, with its countless dependent parts. Our world is a web of interdependencies woven so tightly it sometimes becomes love. End quote. Richard Dawkins espouses how evolution works in his book, The Blind Watchmaker. Mutation is fundamental. Apparently about 1 in about 1,000,000 replications of DNA, a mutation is formed. The odds of that mutation being useful are really slim. A cow does not need sharper teeth to chew grass, nor do Parkinson's or Crohn's disease improve the fortunes of humans. And that mutation had to be passed on to the next generation. The first bug that could fly had a great advantage. But if he got eaten by a lizard before he reproduces, that mutation is lost. Although we've had several billion generations since our early ancestors, given the exactness of DNA replication and the odds of a positive mutation surviving, the chances of us evolving into humans are mighty slim. If DNA replicates exactly as it must do to retain the information, and positive mutations that survive are rare, perhaps there is some unknown force that drives our collective futures forward. Most Unitarians play for team evolution, but I would like to throw some doubt on that certainty. And close your eyes for a moment and recall that image that you stored when you pretended to take a picture. To invoke that memory, your brain just ignited a bunch of neurons that were stored in your hippocampus. Memories that need not be real. Psychologists are finding that memories can be induced or falsified. If your neurons get crossed up, then so do your memories. I know mine do about 10 times a day. What we think we remember is actually an illusion of what actually happened. So going back to that memory you had of that picture with the pretend camera, what if I told you that that moment was a spark of creation, that some all-powerful God created you intact with all your cells as they are now, memories stored in the neurons of your brain. They clapped their hands, and we all just came into being at that moment. Everything we know and believe was we all created just then. All the neurons were lined up to create the illusion that you have been here all your life. Carbon dating is used to prove that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. But couldn't an omnipotence create all the rocks with just the right amount of carbon-14 in them to make it look like they were that old? And why not create some fossils as well? Whatever proof you have of evolution can be countered by simply implying that God created that evidence to fool you. And here I must say, you don't always have to believe everything you think. And maybe it is a tad arrogant to believe that the world was created when I asked you to snap that picture. Maybe it was started when the first human being came around, or a time when that first bit of DNA was born out of the mud some 3.5 billion years ago, as an experiment by some curious, super intelligent being. Richard Dawkins, a renowned atheist, says, "My objection to supernatural belief is precisely that they miserably fail to do justice to sublime grandeur of the real world. They represent a narrowing down from reality and impoverishment of what the real world has to offer." As miraculous as our existence is, how we get here doesn't really matter. What we do here is what really counts. Hubert Reeves says, "Man is the most insane species. He worships an invisible God and slaughters a visible nature without realizing that this nature he slaughters is the invisible God that he worships." Religious wars plague our histories. Humans have fought stubbornly over whose version of life after death is correct. Yet the world could be united in the simple truth that life before death is a miracle. What a joyful thing such an outlook would be. I grieve that someday I will die, but celebrate that most days I won't. There are some 250 billion, that's with a B, stars in the Milky Way alone, and possibly 1 trillion galaxies in the universe. That's 1,000 billion galaxies. It's unfathomable as a number, yet is the source of the phrase, "There are more stars in the universe than grains of sand on earth." Yet here on earth, our life is so intricate, so complex, it's possible that there is no other intelligent life in all the other galaxies. We might possibly be alone. Carl Sagan said the idea of God as an oversized white male with a flowing white beard who sits in the sky and tallies the fall of every sparrow is ludicrous. But if, by God one means the set of physical laws that govern the universe, then clearly there is such a God. This God is emotionally unsatisfying. It does not make much sense to pray to the law of gravity. End quote. We are alive and conscious. That is the most miraculous thing in the universe. And that is something each of us could be grateful for at every moment of every day. If you believe in creation, by all means, get down on a prayer rug 5 times a day and give thanks to God. If you are an evolutionist, stop 5 times a day and display gratitude just for being alive. Stop and smell those roses. Say grace. Give thanks. If you believe in creation, by all means, knock on your neighbor's door and witness them the good news. Or if you believe in evolution, greet each person you meet as if they are a true wonder of the universe. If you believe in creation, wonder if Jesus tapped a jug of water and turned it into wine. If you fancy evolution, wonder at the fact that you can make wine in a cask with some juice and yeast. Equally a miracle. We exhaust ourselves stressing about day-to-day affairs and little time being in awe of our existence. Awaken and reverse that. If you have a pain in your right arm, be amazed that your left arm works. If your relationship is not going so well, be glad that you had a chance to experience love. And here I must acknowledge that I'm a white, straight, able-bodied, able-minded, affluent male with English as a first language. That is, I am privileged. My life has been fairly easy, and I recognize this is not true for all. And that said, I have had my knocks. But this concept of earthly awe is useful to me every day. It is at the core of my happiness and wonder. Sure, I may worry about my kids. The love of my life doesn't always agree with me. I despair at what we're doing with the earth. And I fear for a country where so many people support a buffoon like Trump. But underneath those negative emotions is this sense of wonder, of being alive, that quickly replaces the anger, the worry, frustration, and despair. And I can look at the world with more love and compassion, knowing how fragile and outstanding it is. You could begin your appreciation today, here and now. Look closely at someone else on your screen and know that you are looking at some kind of miracle. Look around and sense those billions of photons darting into your eyes to fire up your neurons. Gaze into the wonders of the awesomeness that surrounds you, that is you. Blessed be.
Brian, I barely have the